All right, a day late, but not a dollar soon. We're back with the next episode of Talkin Lost, Season 2, Episode 4. Everybody hates Hugo. Luke, finally, our first great episode of the season. Man of Science, Man of Faith was an awesome episode to kind of get us in, kind of show us this new run of Lost that we were in for. And then we kind of had two filler episodes that they probably could have fit into one. You know, they were definitely spacing out like they needed to. But this, I would say this is our first like full real episode. We get our second Hurley backstory episode, and it adds kind of, again, it's continuing what all the backstories are doing this season, which is it's adding more context to what we already knew about the characters. And we also see like, some more, dilemmas going on now that the hatch is starting to become more well known to the rest of the survivors. You got anything to say before we get started?
I don't know if I agree with you that it was the first great episode. I really enjoyed the first three, and this one was more flashback focused than the other ones. As we get to the mysteries, I'm more inclined to be invested in the present stuff than the flashback. But this is a very good flashback episode too.
Interesting. All right, our first Lost episode where we may be contending on opposite sides of the aisle for. This will be interesting. All of that and more on today's episode of Talkin Lost. All right, Season 2, Episode 4, Everybody Hates Hugo. Like I said, our second Hurley backstory episode. But there's a lot going on in this episode. And I think that's kind of why I said that this is probably like one of my favorite episodes of the season so far, besides the fact that I'm naturally inherently biased towards Hurley. The fact of the matter is that, like I said, this era of Lost that we got into, now that we're kind of like past the introduction phase, and now that we're exploring more of the island and getting more into the plot-centered section of the story where, like I said, it's the characters are uncovering more mysteries about the island as they are now fully into the hatch. The episode opens with the beeping noise. Hurley is on shift. Locke, as he says later in the episode when he's talking to Charlie, says that he set them up on shifts of about 2 people per every 6 hours in order to hit the button. And like I said, we still have that central conflict set up of, okay, we have to hit this button inside this hatch every 108 minutes or something might happen. Like, we don't actually know. And
it's still the carried over paranoia from last episode. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it did happen, but like if it did happen, we don't know. So let's just press the button.
Exactly. Yeah. The Schrodinger's cat scenario that's been set up here of it's like we don't know what's gonna happen if we hit this button, and that kind of fear is kind of what's causing us to continue to do it, despite the fact that we have no knowledge of what is actually going to happen. It's a very interesting conundrum. Like I said, I mentioned last week that one of the interesting kind of points going into this conflict that would really reign supreme over this entire season is that you don't know if, like I said, it was the real world conflict of, oh no, is something going to happen bad if they don't push this button, or is this just like a thought experiment set up by the Dharma Initiative in order to study kind of the participants' reactions, if you will, But obviously, again, like I said, we're more inclined to think the prior, because as Jack continues to show, as him and Sayid are exploring the hatch in this episode, there is this weird electromagnetic energy that's kind of happening underneath where the hatch is, as they pass that one section of the wall that his key is drawn to. So there are hints to suggest that that what they're experiencing is real, but it's just a matter of, again, what Lindelof was trying to explore with this section of the show, which was the idea of kind of, people, I feel like we're already starting to ponder and theorize about like kind of what the island was and what it could actually mean and whether it was real. Obviously, again, they'd been battling the whole fan theory that, oh, they're actually all dead and the island is purgatory for a while now. And this was kind of the ways that he was trying to hint at that without giving everything away too fast, because let's be honest, they didn't even really know what they wanted to do with the island or what they wanted to be, but it was kind of in the journey of figuring that out where kind of the more interesting storylines came out. Not to mention that this episode is also really good because it deals with another practical survival matter as the show was kind of starting to move away from the more practical stuff, which is, okay, we found this bunker with all this food in it, but we don't know how much food there is. We don't know if there's enough to sustain us for however long a period of time we're still stuck here, because the whole goal is, at this point, we are still kind of a survival show. So, like, obviously, who do we decide to put in charge of figuring out how the food gets divvied up and accounting for it? Hurley. Because nothing bad could possibly go wrong there. Not trying to take any shots at Hurley, but
but it does take some interesting turns, like from later on, because it is like this massive change that comes to to the order of things, if you will. Like, okay, they scavenge for their food, they hunt, and now suddenly there's this big supply. Okay, what negative impacts can that have? So I think this episode does well with that.
Absolutely. It's kind of adding more to, I guess, the kind of the Lord of the Flies, the whole how survival is this always this thin line between order and chaos, where you introduce one new element and everything could devolve instantly. It's like Hurley's saying that, like, we don't know how much food there is. We don't know if there's enough food. You don't want me to tell anybody about the hatch, but people know about it. They're going to start asking questions. I have to be the guy that has to be the barrier between them because everybody else is kind of off doing their own thing. Locke's kind of off on his own. Jack and Sayid are exploring the hatch. Kate is just, taking
a shower
and taking a shower. I was kind of a little bit tight at Kate this episode.
She's making big noise, like Jack and Sayid are wondering what the hell is going on. It's
exactly. She's kind of acting a little bit irresponsible. Charlie's starting to get a little bit inquisitive. Like I said, this is kind of starting to be the beginning of, like I said, they're hinting at it a little bit, but how Charlie is starting to like become a little bit more antagonistic. He's like, you've become one of them. You've become the man. You're keeping secrets from everybody. You're lying to me. You're not being my best friend. Because Charlie still doesn't believe Hurley about him winning the lottery out in the real world. And
Locke's just telling Charlie everything about
Locke's just straight up telling Charlie everything about the hatch and kind of undermining Hurley. And again, it's continuing the fact that, again, all of this kind of spawns out for the fact that Jack wants to do one thing, Locke wants to do another thing. And they're both kind of just going about it at their own pace right now. And Hurley is the poor sucker that's kind of stuck in the middle. And he's realizing his position, and it's kind of driving him nuts because, again, as we see in his flashbacks in this episode, it kind of, as we saw what happened in the immediate, his flashback episode of the prior season where we first discover about the numbers, we see, all the bad stuff that would happen to him. But this one, we kind of focus in on this micro moment in the immediate aftermath of him winning the lottery, where he kind of starts to realize that he's no longer in a position where he has to kind of be at everybody's beck and call and take everybody's shit, as we see him working at the fast food place where he worked and, dealing with, it always makes me laugh how back in the day, fast food bosses actually like took the job seriously, unlike now where they realize that it's just absolutely pointless and they're just like at the beck and call of their corporate overlords. But back in the day, people actually took those corporate higher up jobs seriously, much to the chagrin of their workers. And so Hurley, you see Hurley quitting his job, and then you see him hanging out with his friend, played by a very popular character actor, TJ Qualls, who is all over the place in the early to mid 2000s. Things like Road Trip.
I think he was in the core.
He was in the core. Yes, he was also.
That's right. That's right. I know him.
He was also the young cop that arrested Badger undercover in Saul's intro episode in Breaking Bad. He's been in a lot of things, and so it's kind of them quitting their job, them going out and hanging out, doing whatever throughout the day. And kind of at the end of the flashback, Hurley asked him, he's like, dude, just promise me that nothing's ever going to change our friendship. And of course, what happens is they stop in for gas at the same gas station where Hurley just happened to buy the lottery ticket. The news crew is there interviewing him. They see Hurley in the car, and you just see the look on his face of he's like, fuck, now everything's going to be different, kind of honing in on that micro moment of like, and it's explored at the beginning, where we see the image of him like first passing out after he realizes that he won the lottery with the numbers. And it's kind of like Hurley saw that as like the beginning of his bad luck chain, ultimately.
Yeah, it goes back to those numbers and his sort of attitude towards the hatch isn't that friendly. He'll put in the numbers, but he doesn't seem too happy about it. Like,
no.
He just wakes up, hears the beeping, like, okay,
yeah,
I'll put in numbers.
Here we go again. Yeah, not all.
Like Hurley's definitely becoming a more complex character than at first you would think.
Yes, absolutely. As we have been saying with Lost since the beginning. Like I said, we also check in briefly with the other survivors on the other side of the island. Michael, Jin, and Sawyer still stuck in the pit. The tail end survivors, like I said, I know their names. The names of Anna Lucia and Mr. Echo. Set them free. First they bring on Michael and Jin in order to interrogate them. They leave Sawyer in the pit because, surprise, surprise, they don't like him. They interrogate them. They realize that they are successfully able to confirm that they are not the others. What's it called? So they lift Sawyer out of the pit. They bring them to one of their hideouts. It's another Dharma bunker that they found on that side of the island. And they meet with the other two survivors. We have Libby, who is the skinny blonde girl, and who Michael briefly meets. And then you also meet, again, Rose had been telling us throughout the episode that her husband was alive, and now we finally get to see Rose's husband, Bernard, who's confirmed to be alive, also with the tail end survivors. There's one other girl in there as well, but she doesn't stick around for long. I'll just let you in that secret as well. Like I said, this is a smaller section. Like I said, there's not too much happening, but the thing that's basically, continue to be shown here is that, like, okay, so like they are all one big oceanic family. There's not too much that happens here, but what do you think of the tail end survivors so far? What we've gotten to know of them?
Yeah, that's the thing. We haven't really gotten to know them. We don't really know what has happened with them. Obviously, they've gone more feral, if you will, compared to our main cast. I'm sure we might learn something about their relationship with the others if they have one such as that. But yeah, there's this almost dramatic. I think it's called dramatic irony, right? When the audience knows something the characters don't. Like, we
Yes.
know they're alive, but
Yes.
back on the other side of the island, Sun is told that Claire found the bottle, and
Yes.
that probably that they lead to that. I'm so sure there's going to be an emotional reunion of sorts
Yes, exactly.
whenever that happens.
Exactly. Well, because the whole thing is that up until this point, the beach survivor, we've been so focused on everything going on in the hatch that we forgot that there are some people, again, who are still think that the that the raft survivors are still out there. But this is their first indication, kind of, that, like, oh, maybe that raft didn't work out for them ultimately. Maybe that maybe that didn't work out. So that's kind of our first indication of that. When Claire is walking on the beach, she finds the bottle, and then her and Shannon decide to give it to Sun, and you see Sun making the decision at the end to bury it rather than tell everybody else. So what's it called? What do you think is going through? So, like I said, it's a brief scene, and obviously, again, we know that Jin and Michael and Sawyer are alive on the other side of the island. But what do you think? What did you think was going through Sun's head at that moment?
I guess it's kind of an attempt to not kill the hope for everyone else, all the other 40 unnamed characters that are on the island
That we still don't know.
No, but yeah, I think it's just to hold on to that pain and not pass it on to others. Just have them believe in something, so that they just are generally stronger on the island, because it's still a very precarious situation that they're in.
Yeah. Going back to the tail end survivors real quick. I think what's interesting here is, like you said, there's a lot lesser of them. That's the first thing to note, is that, again, there's only five. Again, I counted.
They can only afford so many extras.
Well, that, but also it's like this. So, but this does have a story purpose as well, because there's only 5 of them. But we know that, just based on, logic fact, the plane was full when it crashed, so there were more tail end survivors. So my guess is the fact that because they're so tight knit, because they're so much more hidden, because they're so much more ruthless in their survival approach than the main survivors who crashed on the beach. So, this is going to lead you to assume that the others were definitely a lot. They probably ended up a lot more closer to the others. They were probably a lot more heavily affected by the others, which is why they're so much more distrustful, so much more unified, because they have to be, honestly. And obviously they're led by Ana Lucia, who we come to learn is a much more tough character than previously. Like I said, this was Michelle Rodriguez at the height of her girl bossdom. She was kind of the first one that was kind of leading the charge throughout the early 2000s before she was replaced by future
this was
ones.
2007, 2005-ish, right? So this would have been about, like...
So, like, right a couple years after the first Fast and Furious, but before she rejoined the Fast and Furious and got Avatar.
Yeah, because she was only in the first one, and then she was barely in the fourth.
Yes.
She wasn't in that many.
Yeah, she really wasn't in.
Yeah,
her big breakout was there was this boxing movie that came out, and I never remember the name of it, but it was this movie that she had the year before. I'm looking it up right now. It was this movie that she had the year before she landed the first Fast and Furious movie. It was called, I'm pulling it up right now. It was called Girl Fight. She won an Indie Spirit Award and a Gotham Award for Best Debut Performance before she landed it. And then, famously, she was also in... Oh, this is always my favorite, going through her filmography in the early 2000s and showing what a time it was. The first Fast and Furious. Then 1 year later, she has Resident Evil. Then 1 year after that, she has SWAT. Have you ever heard of this movie, SWAT?
I thought that was like one of those shows that has a million episodes, like 911 or
It is.
Fire PD or something.
It is. And
there's also a movie.
It is based on this movie where, again, so it basically revolves around a special weapons task force, and the cast comprises of, and again, shows late 90s, early 2000s, Colin Farrell, Samuel L. Jackson, Michelle Rodriguez, and LL Cool J. And the bad guy, Jeremy Renner. It is a classic.
Renner time.
Classic early 2000s movie where you're like, this movie with this soundtrack and this feel and this dialogue could only have existed in this very, very specific time. I don't know if it's great, but it's pretty damn entertaining is all that I'm going to say. So yeah, that's kind of like was Michelle Rodriguez's claim to fame before she kind of settled in kind of just doing Fast and Furious movies. And has she been in anything else really?
She was in Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, and she was in Widows too. Forgot about that one. Yeah, man, this filmography is not great. A couple other Resident Evil movies, 2 Machete movies, Battle Los Angeles. Wow, this is not looking good at all. And yep, pretty much just Fast and Furious movies. But hey, you know, when you're a staple of the Fast and Furious franchise, you know,
and she was in Lost, so
and she was in Lost.
And Lost is great. So
the Lost is great, and that'll always kind of be part of her legacy. I wonder if she gets many Lost questions when that comes back around. Really only other major plot point that happens is Charlie. And like I said, they've been laying the hints as far as that goes, but I will say Charlie goes through a little bit of a villain arc this season. Why that decision was, I'm assuming because, again, Charlie is kind of like such the lovable, sympathetic drug addict in the first season, but they obviously hinted at the end of the first season, you know, upon the realization that the Virgin Mary statues were filled with drugs. And Locke, knowing about Charlie's issues, very deliberately did not tell him about that. And then Sayid, knowing nothing about those issues, told Charlie. So we know that that's going to come back to play a part as well. It may or may not also connect to one of the tail end survivors as well. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, so mostly it's the fact that Charlie's kind of starting to be a little bit of a dick towards Hurley. You know, he's like, oh, you've become part of the man. I'm just asking for a jar of peanut butter for Claire because she loves peanut butter, blah, blah, blah. And Hurley's like, dude, Jack told me I can't do anything. He's like, I can't give anything out to anyone because we don't want to cause a panic. And so, but then Charlie goes to Locke, and Locke just immediately tells Charlie exactly what's going on in the hatch. And Charlie's kind of like the first one is like who is like kind of in the place of the audience avatar here, where he's like, so wait, we got to press a button every 108 minutes or what? The island's going to explode? And Locke's like, yes. Like just pretty much.
If you want to know, just go to Locke. Exactly. He'll tell you.
Pretty much.
Got no problem.
Locke really does have all the answers. But again, it's like I kind of get where Hurley's coming from, where it's like, dude, like we're trying to maintain peace and order here. And you're just going around telling people about like what's going on here. It's like, what am I?
Hurley's so fed up with the situation that he's about to blow up all the food.
Literally. I thought that was the funniest part, where he brings in, literally goes to the Black Rock. He's like, you know what? Fuck this. Goes to the Black Rock, gets 2 of the things of dynamite that again only recently blew up Arzt, and then is gonna blow up all the food. I'm like, I'm like, I see where you're coming from. I feel like there's a better course of action here, you know? So, and I love how it takes like a voice of reason like Bernard, like Rose to come in and basically tell him like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this ultimately, you know? And Hurley again is very justifiably going on a rant where he's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to be the bad guy, not Jack, not Locke, not Kate, not Sayid, me. I'm going to be the bad guy. And I don't know how I can handle that, but Rose is able to come up with an equitable solution to Jack, for him to bring to Jack, and he basically tells Jack, he's like, yeah, there's not enough food to sustain everybody long term if we ration it out. So better to just like start giving it out now. Ultimately, you know, but it's like we still kind of are in this survival spot. So
and we get another campfire ending to the episode, which we haven't had in a while.
We haven't had that in a minute. Yeah, no, so that was kind of
here nice. We go. Here's the last 3 minutes of the episode.
Yeah,
a trademark of Lost that I enjoy.
Indeed. Yeah, it's been a minute since we've gotten that. So yeah, like I said, this was more of a, I guess you could say, figuring things out episode rather than like I said, the first 3 episodes were so forward moving and so plot oriented. It's nice though, you know, we can still get good episodes like these kind of in the mix, because these are the episodes that made us fall in love with the show in the first place. You know, the more character focused episodes, if you will. And this is of character and this was in addition to, again, this was a continuation of Hurley was one of the people who we only got one flashback episode for last season. So it was kind of nice getting a little bit of extra context on him as opposed to Jack, who we'd already seen so much of, Locke, who we'd already seen so much of, and Michael, who, well, let's face it, he just doesn't make for the most interesting backstory episodes. It's sad to say, but it's unfortunate we were 0 for 2 on that front. So
I think there was one more thing, like just minor, like when Sayid and Jack were like going under the
when they were exploring the hatch,
they said like, oh, there's 7 feet of concrete. This is what they did in Chernobyl.
Yes.
So that's another.
Yeah, another hint.
Another scientific jargon they can throw in that is vague energy
Yeah, so
thing.
like, yeah, something they're like something's wacky about this.
It's
So
magnetic. It's radioactive.
exactly.
It's
They're like like I said, they're definitely hinting like there is something down here. Like we are pressing this button for a reason. We just don't know what it is.
yeah.
So
Will we find out? I don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know with Lost. Like you either will or you'll get 3 more questions when they do.
Exactly. Typical loss. Like I said, we're just gonna keep talking about it week to week to week until we eventually get to the ending where we may get some answers. Who knows? Oh no! Oh no! Why did it knock out Luke? It knocked you out for some reason.
I
That
think
never happened.
I thought it knocked you out.
What? It did knock me out.
Maybe it knocked me out. I don't know.
That's something. I don't know. That was a weird glitch.
It's the island.
It's the island. It hears us. It hears us. It can't let us know it's.
Button.
We didn't press the button in time. Every 108 minutes. Luke, before we get out of here, I just have to reveal to the audience. We have to talk about this movie because I've only watched the first half of this movie, and oh man, I am just already like, yeah, the Russos needed to go back to Marvel after this. They really did. Like they tried. They really did. COVID did them no favors. They tried to have their own studio. They tried to make their own movies. They really did. They gave it their best effort. You know, I didn't hate Sherry. I actually kind of enjoyed the Gray Man. I still don't understand the hatred towards it. Man, the Electric State. Oh man, what a movie. And I guess the reason why I need to bring this up is because we haven't had a movie quite like this in so long. Where it is a movie that is trying to be so earnest in its approach. And man, is it missing the mark on every possible chance it can get. But it is just so damn enjoyable. And I'm probably the only person that's like enjoying this movie because when everybody else hates him on a movie,
you watched only half of it.
I tend to enjoy it. Exactly. I've only watched half of it. This is a movie, Luke. I just need to run down the cast list of who is in this movie. I'm sure you know about it already, but
more or less.
This is a movie that stars, obviously, again, Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt are the main stars. This is a movie that also co-stars Ke Kwan, Stanley Tucci, Giancarlo Esposito, Jason Alexander, and features the voices of Woody Harrelson, Anthony Mackie, Brian Cox, Jenny Slate, Coleman Domingo. Like, how the hell they were able to afford this many people, I have no idea. That's probably part of the reason why this is like the most expensive Netflix movie ever made. This movie had like a final estimated budget of like $320 million, which is like, isn't that more expensive than like an Avengers movie? I'm pretty sure.
Definitely more than the first two. I think Infinity War and Endgame reached some pretty astronomical numbers, but
yes, but it paid off. And I'm just like,
this is some Avatar level.
I'm
budget.
just like, I like, listen, the money shows on the screen because the effects are the best part about the movie. Like the designs of the robots are
everything
pretty cool.
I've seen, like the robots look great.
Yeah,
like the
it really does. And like
I've heard it was a book or graphic novel.
It was an illustrated kids book is what it's based on. So like that's another part of the reason why I don't want to give this too much flack, because at the end of the day, like it is like based on a kid's book and it's clearly trying to be made like for kids. But oh man, it is just, I can't make heads or tails of this movie so far. It is just so nutty and so bonkers. The fact that the Russos were actually able to kind of pull this off. I don't know. I might end up enjoying it by the end. But Millie Bobby Brown is like the worst that she's ever been in anything. It's still hilarious to me that she's like 21 and married and they're like still casting her in these like kid roles. But I also watched Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag this past weekend, and that was excellent. Like one of the best movies so far this year, easily. Just
this guy just turns out movies.
He really does. But like Soderbergh, you know what it is? It's like Soderbergh is such an experimental filmmaker that we forget that he's just so effortless when it comes to genre. Again, this is the dude who directed the Ocean's movies, Traffic, The Limey, Out of Sight. His first movie ever is Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which is like what kicked off kind of like the indie boom of the 90s. Side Effects, Magic Mike, which is again another unexpectedly great movie. He basically kind of is responsible for Channing Tatum's career turnaround. You know, he's always a guy who seems to be like one step ahead of the curve. But the problem is that he kind of sometimes gets bogged down a little bit in experimental filmmaking, that we forget that he can just churn out a genre banger like this. Not to mention the fact that a majority of these types of movies that he's been making over the last decade have primarily gone straight to streaming. You know, movies like High Flying Bird, like Let Them All Talk, like No Sudden Move, those all went directly to streamers. So the fact that he actually made this movie and released it in theaters is amazing. It's a cat and mouse spy thriller, a more serious Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if you will, with Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, who could not be more perfectly matched. And this movie also co-stars Marissa Abella from Industry, Reggie Jean Page, Tom Burke, Naomi Harris, and Pierce Brosnan. And it's exactly what you think it is. It is just a tight-knit cat and mouse thriller. espionage, trying to figure out who's the mole. You've seen types of movies like this a million times, but Soderbergh is an absolute master and he knows what he's doing. I had an absolute blast. There's really not too much more I can say about it. If you haven't seen it yet, I heavily recommend it. It was excellent.
I will be doing it. It's only like 94 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tight
94 minutes. And oh man, it, like I said, you can kind of sense like when it's going to be over, but like it is so perfectly paced. It's one of the few movies that comes out this year that you don't want it to be over when it is. And oh man, Blanchett and Fassbender, they need to do more movies together. Holy shit, they were perfectly matched. Also, like Blanchett making up for the absolute disaster that was Disclaimer this past year, because oh my god, that's another show I still can't make heads or tails of. But oh man, you see any movies this past weekend, or no?
I'm just getting ahead on our mission.
Yes, on our mission rewatch. Like I said, we will be commencing that soon. I'm just still figuring out some
Lost alumni in there.
Yes,
in the
indeed.
Second movie.
Yes,
I know Sawyer's in the opening.
Almost like they're all bad robot productions. So almost like they share some cast members. Also, fun fact: new J.J. Abrams show, Duster, set to be released in May, also starring Josh Holloway. So we'll see a little J.J. Abrams Josh Holloway reunion right there. But like I said, some more interesting things on the horizon as well. Like I said, I just put out my top 10 movie trilogies episode. There will be more coming from that front. I've got a couple of things in the works. A couple of more TV shows, some more performances. Dustin and I will also be going live this week to talk about one Robert De Niro, doing our De Niro Hall of Fame. We figured it's past time. He's getting up there in age. He doesn't have that many more movies left in him. So, yeah, like I said, a bunch of stuff to look forward to for the rest of the month of March and going into April. But in the meantime, Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Well, this week, since you accommodated to my hectic schedule, I'll give your top 10 trilogies the spotlight.
Thank you.
Go ahead and watch that. It goes great with food. If you need a 10-minute video to watch with your dinner, this one is.
It actually kind of does.
It's perfect for that.
That's good. I like that. I didn't think about it from that way, but I like that.
Yeah, you always try and struggle to find the right video, and the food's already cold, so just put on the Talkin TV top 10 trilogies. It's a good list.
It's pretty good, right? I've been working on it for a while. They would always range at like 15
You got
minutes.
the essentials in.
I like shortened it to like just about 11 minutes, which I thought was perfect. So. Yeah, like I said, there are a couple more niche ones that I wanted to include, but I figured I'm like, this is my favorite. So like I said, there'll be more coming from that front as well. And you guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. You guys know the rest. We'll be back next week for Talkin Lost episode 5, and we'll also be, oh man, Luke, Severance, man. Oh, I'm
in season 2. I've watched one episode.
Oh man, you like I said, you got ways to go. You got catch up to do, but. Oh man,
I will be caught up. I will be caught up.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. All right, we'll see you guys next week on Talkin Lost.